Welcome to IT Visionaries, created by The Mission, your number one source for accelerated learning.
In this episode of IT Visionaries, Ian chats with Tony Bradley, the editor-in-chief at Techspective and a regular contributor to Forbes, DevOps.com, and Container Journal. They discuss the rise of mobile, building internal apps for your employees, and how to upgrade your company's cybersecurity. Enjoy.
IT Visionaries is brought to you by the Lightning Platform by Salesforce. The Lightning Platform is a leading cloud platform that makes building AI-powered apps faster and easier. With Salesforce, now everyone is empowered to build apps for their organization. Learn more at salesforce.com/buildapps.
Welcome to another episode of IT Visionaries. Today, on the other end of the phone, we have Tony Bradley. What's going on, Tony?
Nothing much. Thank you for having me.
So you, much like us here at The Mission, have a background in some writing and media, and we wanted to have you on to talk about mobile and all things Techspective, which is also the name of your amazing website that has all things tech related. Can you share a little bit about your background?
So I initially got into IT just as a IT support, kind of became a network administrator, got into doing Windows admin stuff around 2000-ish. Someone came along and said they needed someone who understood Windows to be on their security team. And that was kind of when security was semi-new, but I was like, all right, well, that's cool. I'll do that. And so I jumped from the network admin side to the security side and got my CISSP certification. And I spent a number of years doing security analyst, security consulting type stuff. But around that same time, I also started writing on the side. I was doing the about.com site for internet and network security. And I didn't plan on that actually being a thing from like a career perspective or even an income perspective. I thought it would just be like resume fodder. Like I'd be able to go to my boss and say, hey, look, I'm internet famous, so you should give me more money. But that kind of, it just kept going, so like that really kind of opened up a lot of connections with vendors, with IT professionals and IT security professionals. And it really allowed me to really expand my network. And, ultimately I ended up writing for a number of other sites. I was writing for PC World. I was writing for CSO. I authored or co-authored 10 or 12 books. And at some point I dropped the security consulting side and just kind of went full time into the tech writing and security writing side of things. And so that's around when I launched Techspective.net, which is again my website. And then I'm also still a contributing writer at Forbes, and I write for DevOps.com and ContainerJournal.com, and still do other freelance content marketing projects on the side and stuff like that. So I try to keep busy. My keyboard gets a lot of use.
Yeah, and so it's hopefully fun for our listeners. Like you've probably read Tony's work at some point in the last couple of years, and you've written about a number of different kind of categories and trends and technologies within kind of that tech ecosystem, touching on cybersecurity, touching on a lot of different stuff. But you also have a day job as senior manager of content marketing at AlertLogic.
That's correct. Like I said, when I first kind of got out of security and went full-time writing, I did that just solo for 7 or 8 years. And then a friend of mine kind of pulled me back into the corporate side of things. It's good. I mean, I'm doing the blog there and I'm doing social media there. So it's really just kind of taking all of the things that I kind of built up as, Tony Bradley Inc. and applying that for AlertLogic as well. So, the two things play well together.
Let's talk mobile. So what are the things that you've seen across, let's just say, the last 5 years as this change and rise of mobile has, started and now is kind of the full-fledged takeover here? What are the things that you're seeing? What are those trends that are going to be really important for CIOs and IT leaders going forward?
Well, I guess I would start with saying I have kind of conflicting response to that, because obviously mobile devices have exploded. If you go 5 years, and definitely if you go over 10 years, where everyone's got a smartphone, everyone, pretty much everyone's got a tablet, and in a lot of cases that has become the primary computing device. Now, where I would kind of step back and reverse that is, I think that like the commercial that Apple had been running for the iPad Pro or whatever, where they try to say that it's not a computer.
What's a computer? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
the whole what's a computer. And I was like, okay, well, that now I think you've gone a little too far. I mean, I think we all understand that that's just a different form of computer. And on the one hand, it's just a different form of computer. And on the other hand, there's a whole lot it can't do. So I love my iPhone and I love the iPad, but I also really, really love my Surface Book. So, and I'm still, hardcore. I'm going to use my PC for a lot of things. In fact, my wife is much more on the mobile side, because she can live her whole life through the iPhone, and she'll send me a link to something and say, hey, can you look at this or whatever? And I'm like, yeah, I'm going to go pull this up on my computer because I don't want to try to like deal with a mobile website.
Oh, totally. And not only that, I mean, like our poor little thumbs are subjected to things that 100,000 years of being a human being we've never had to deal with. So I think that there's other ramifications beyond just like, when is that crossover point between, okay, this email's too long, I just actually need to save it as a draft and get onto my actual computer.
Right. Well, and I mean, I maximize the use of the autocorrect when it comes to typing on a mobile device, because I just kind of like mash my thumbs around and letters appear that have nothing to do with what I'm actually thinking, and somehow Siri magically figures it all out for me most of the time. Sometimes you have to double check it, but yeah. So to go back to your question, I mean, yes, it's exploded. It's definitely the trend. It's definitely the future. I'm not sure that I would call a time of death on the PC anytime soon. But that said, I think that all companies, whether you're talking about building a customer-facing app or an internal app for employees, I think it's important to have the app and not expect people to use a mobile website. It's a vastly different experience. I don't know if you recall, but like Facebook was kind of slow to get on the bandwagon with the app, and LinkedIn was too, where they thought, well, no, we've got the website. Your tablet or your smartphone has a browser, just go to the website. And even back then, 5-6 years ago, I was pushing against that and saying, yes, my mobile device has a browser and I can technically get to LinkedIn, or technically I can get to Facebook, but that's not the same. It's not even like remotely the same. And the app is so much better. But well, two things, and I don't want to, and you can feel free to jump in anytime, but two things. Number one, I would say, as evidence of the explosion of mobile, look at the number of companies, billion-dollar companies, that wouldn't exist if it weren't for mobile devices. The things that have like sprung up purely out of iOS or whatever, things like Instagram or Pinterest or whatever, that are companies that were basically spawned by mobile devices and have become, juggernauts of their own. And so there's a lot of momentum there.
I think the thing that we've kind of like seen happen is this rise of people who are like the app builders, like the people who are building mobile apps for consumer use that are focused on, building the next big hit app. I mean, this is actually an interesting anecdote. We were talking to someone who is an SEO, head of SEO at one of the companies that manages like on-demand food delivery. And this was not on the podcast, so this is behind the scenes. And they were saying that they had up to this point done zero SEO, like zero. And they were like, our website is so bad that I forget the exact thing, but basically they didn't have I don't think they could do like email subscribers or something like that for their website. Basically like the most simple thing you could possibly do. They didn't have like an autoresponder email or something like that. And they said that the entire company, I mean, I forgot how many downloads they've done. I think like, well over the tens of millions of downloads for this app. And their entire company had never focused on their website at all. And they just built for the app. But then it was kind of like at this point where there was a large percentage of people that they wanted to get, into using the app. But that company it was built as an app. It was built like app first. And I think we're starting to see some of the companies that are the B2B companies that had never had a need to build an app because they're like, well, we have these types of sales funnels and there's really no need to communicate with our customers in this way. And, we can just use email and all these other things that are starting to realize like, well, this is how people would just rather have day-to-day business or operations run through this one specific thing. I mean, is that a fair kind of assessment?
Yeah, I think so. And like you just pointed out, I mean, there's kind of both ends of that spectrum. And so like to go back to what I was saying, I mean, Instagram stands out to me as an app. It was an app first approach. And even now it's like, yes, you can go to Instagram.com and you can go on the website and there's some rudimentary functionality, but it's really kind of clunky and it's not designed for that. And, that wasn't their focus. And then, like you say, you go to the other side of it where you might have a business that, maybe they've done okay with the website, but now they've got to kind of catch up with the times, so to speak, and take a look at, well, what are the advantages of doing it, of interacting with customers or interacting with employees through an app as opposed to expecting someone to try to use a mobile website.
Well, and I would say that the question that we see is but I'm a cybersecurity company. Why would I need to build an app for my customers? Or I'm a blank, I'm a automotive company or whatever it is. Like, why do those companies, how does it expand their customer experience? How does it, or employee experience, which is kind of the other end of that, but how does building those apps, why does this matter? Like, is this one of the things where, are you going to get completely left behind if you don't have that type of communication? Because kind of where I see this is like, there is that tipping point where you go from, okay, I'm using this app on the go. It's super helpful. I can do it in short bursts. But when I want to do deep work, I need to be sitting down in front of a laptop. It's almost completely different use cases where it's like, you can't have either or anymore. You have to have both. And specifically for B2B.
Well, but so to answer your question, I think not every company needs to have a mobile app. I would start there and say, it's sort of like, if you remember the beginning of the .com boom, where like, first companies started getting websites, and then all of a sudden it became this thing where like you had to have a domain, you had to have a website. But eventually I think some companies kind of stepped back and said, well, do we? Like, who are we trying to, what's the goal of the website? Who are we trying to reach? And so if you're looking at, like you said, like an automotive supplier or whatever, and you're trying to say, you're trying to determine, do I need to develop a mobile app? I think the start of that, the answer to that question is, are you expecting people to do something else on their mobile device? If your business is such that there wouldn't be any reason for someone to like pull out their smartphone and try to go to your website and do business with you, then you probably don't need a mobile app. But if there's any function or any interaction with your company on the mobile device level, then yes, I think it's worth looking at. But I don't think you want to just build a mobile app for the sake of building a mobile app, because then it becomes administrative and potential security headache of making sure that it's updated. Because if you're going to have it, it's got to be good. Otherwise, you're making yourself look bad. Just like with a website, you don't want to have a crappy website.
Yeah, I mean, I would push back a little bit on the idea. I wouldn't say that, like everybody, like wave the magic wand, everybody needs to have an app. But I would say from a customer experience standpoint, like there's something to be said for the thing that's sitting in your pocket that has little, if it's an iPhone or whatever, the little buckets that you can put things in, your work bucket, and that a specific vendor or a specific place has one place that you can go that the answers are going to be in there. And it could be the answers of, immediately talking to someone for customer service. It could be immediately being able to message your particular sales rep with a question. It could be looking at a dashboard. It could be getting, like up-to-date information or future product launches or whatever that thing is. I mean, I think that there are so many use cases for it because it's such a simple, like, we're going into this culture where we're so app-based in, the idea of crawling through your email to find something just sounds so awful at this point. We all are just so inundated with different things where it's like, it would be kind of nice to just tap in and say, oh, this is where that stuff lives. So, I mean, I see your point where it's like, you don't want to just say that everybody, maybe everybody doesn't need them, but the other side of that is like, maybe everybody does. Like, maybe that is what it looks like in 10 years.
Maybe. I mean, and again, I think it's sort of like the beginning of the .com, with buying domains, where it's like, because like you just said, if I need something from a vendor, looking in the app store for an app is probably my first stop. Like before I would like try to do things a different way, I would probably go, well, do they have an app? And so, right there, you do kind of draw some like where your company might be falling behind, or your competition has a strategic advantage if they have an app, because that's the way people want to interact. And I mean, 5 years ago, it wouldn't have occurred to me that I needed to have an app for my grocery store or an app for, even like Lowe's or Home Depot or whatever. But I use those apps all the time.
Yeah.
Because now when I walk into the store, it's an efficiency thing. If I walk into something, especially something the size of Home Depot or Lowe's, and I'm like, okay, well, all I need is this, number 6 screw that's 2.5 inches long. Where do I find that? And instead of walking around the entire warehouse or trying to like read all the aisles, I just pull it up in the app and it says, hey, go to aisle 12, bay 6. And I'm like, all right, cool. I'm good. And, and making sure that they even have it in stock and, all those things that like just really kind of are convenience for me and simplify my life and make it easier for me to do business with them.
Yeah, it's a great point where it's like, if it eliminates barriers to or friction, then it's helpful. If it adds friction, then it's not. Do you think that changes for mobile experiences for employees, like internally? I mean, I think that this is one of those really interesting use cases that I don't think, we saw coming as much as, as soon as the kind of initial apps started coming out, that it's like, man, we could actually just build our own like host of applications for our company that our employees can opt into and use. How do you kind of see mobile experiences change for how companies can build apps specifically for their own employees?
Well, I think there's a lot of lessons to be learned from the way companies deal with consumers. I mean, basically, if you're building an app for your employees, then the employee is the customer. I think you have to look at it from that perspective and try to look at it from what do they want, what are they going to be trying to accomplish, and like you just said, how can I reduce instead of increase the friction to allow that to happen? To go back to something you said earlier about the different buckets, I mean, like everyone else, I mean, on my phone, I've got, the entertainment folder and the productivity folder, and, I kind of have my apps separated out that way. And I have a folder for work, and it's got various apps, but, I've got the app for ADP mobile, so I can go in and request days off, or I can check out, what my pay stub looks like this week, make sure all the math is correct. I've got apps for filing expenses. That's one of the biggest time savers, in my opinion, for anyone who's in a role where you're traveling or you're filing expenses on a regular basis. I mean, that's always been such a headache to like sift through the receipts and try to scan them and do all these things and enter all the information. And the apps that they have now for that are amazing. I mean, you basically just take a picture of the receipt and it fills in all the information and you hit send and you're done. I mean, so that's a huge time saver for people.
Yeah, I forget the company, it was someone we talked to where they had an employee, like a citizen developer, that built one of those for their company that like the entire company implemented, which was like, it was like I forget the size, but it was like 5,000 person company. Like it was a pretty big company. And they did like a hackathon and somebody was just like, the classic, buy or build sort of thing. Pretty amazing stuff. But no, it's those like huge pains that internal employees have, which really just boil down to time. Like how much time can you save your employees? Like the most important metric, I mean, it's really all of our most important metrics, but the most important thing that you can do. And for a lot of these applications, like it's the automation of old things that used to be an HR function or an IT function or a finance function or something that just now can be completely automated and nobody ever has to touch it. Or not nobody, but a lot less.
Well, and so there's the whole, you have on the one hand the shadow IT movement, which is, basically people just going off and doing their own thing, setting up their own server, signing up for Dropbox, even though it's not, company sanctioned or whatever, just because, ultimately employees are going to try to find the ways to streamline their own lives and their own jobs. And so, if you just say, well, hey, Bob, I need you to accomplish this goal, but the tools the company has provided make that difficult. Again, add friction instead of reduce friction. And then Bob looks at it and says, okay, but I can use what I do know about how to solve this problem. I can build my own solution, or I can find a third-party solution that is outside of basically an unauthorized solution outside of the purview of IT to make things happen. But ultimately, it's like the end user is the one that truly understands what is trying to be accomplished and how to do that in a way that is best for them. And so I think that's why you've seen this sort of big shift as we went from the kind of the old school IT of a much more dictatorial perspective of, I'm going to tell you, you are going to use this laptop. It's going to have this configuration. This is what you're going to do with it, to the BYOD, bring your own device movement, where everyone, now has their own smartphone and their own tablet. And then, now you have kind of like almost a bring your own technology perspective of, I'm going to bring all of my own stuff. But, IT has had to like kind of adapt to that and to the change from, I have these kind of draconian policies in place and I have total control, to, okay, now how do I give employees the freedom to do what they want to do, or work with them, and cooperate with them and collaborate with them to develop the things they need without compromising, my ability to manage IT as a whole.
Totally. Yeah. Do you think that like, what are some things that you've seen that help with the governance of that type of, shadow IT and bringing those things together? Like, what are some best practices that CIOs or CTOs or IT professionals have used to kind of say, like, let me get my hands around this population of people who are finding unique solutions to all of this and embracing that?
Well, the biggest thing I think is just cultural. It's just making sure that employees, that the understanding that the employees are your customer, and making sure that they're aware that you're there to help, and being open enough to have a conversation about what it is that's trying to be accomplished, what are the suggestions from the employee about what's the best way to accomplish that, and then finding a way to work together to do that, or at least have a rational conversation about maybe some of the business reasons or security reasons why that can't be done or why it needs to be done differently. It's just getting away from the sort of default no, just saying no, or having this culture where people feel like they have to go behind your back to get things done. So you need to be open enough to be involved in that conversation in the first place. But the flip side of that is you also do need to have some kind of tools in place from a like network scanning and visibility perspective that lets you see, what are all of the devices that are connecting to my network? What are all of the applications, the services, the containers? Because people are going to continue to do things without approval, and it's going to vary from company to company how sort of draconian you want to be in trying to enforce that or fight against that. But whether you fight it or not, you at least need to be aware of it. Otherwise, you're just exposed to risk that you don't even know about. So on the one hand, you need to be open and have a culture where employees feel comfortable coming to you, and you're there to facilitate getting things done and not just get in the way. And then on the other hand, you do still need to like scan and monitor and know what's going on in your network.
Switching gears to some of the, cybersecurity issues that you've seen, you've written about cybersecurity a ton, and can you kind of share like a little bit more in depth on, you wrote an article about 5 key benefits of upgrading your company's cybersecurity, and I'll just kind of rehash those pretty quick here. It gives you peace of mind, it helps you build buyer confidence, it increases search engine rankings, you get higher conversions, and more flexibility with freelancers. We'll link up the article in the show notes here so people can read it. But like, what is expand on those kind of benefits of upgrading your cybersecurity posture, and like why that's, more important than ever?
Well, part of the reason it's more important than ever, I'll start there, is the majority of the attacks, or at least the attacks that you would hear about or care about, are predominantly automated. And so there for years has been this sort of prevailing belief of, well, I'm a small company, nobody's coming after me, or you see it at the consumer level too, of, well, I don't really need to worry about security that much, there's nothing on my computer. But the thing is, the attackers don't care, because the attack is generally automated. It's not looking for something in particular, it's simply looking for a vulnerable endpoint that can be compromised. And to go back to the, well, I don't have anything that they want to take. Maybe you don't, but your machine can still be encrypted with ransomware, and you might not have anything that the attacker wants to take, but you probably want access to your own stuff. So ransomware is going to ruin your day one way or another. And then the other kind of like really hot attack, an emerging attack, is crypto mining and cryptojacking, which almost seems like a victimless crime to an extent, because like the exploit, it installs on your PC and uses kind of your idle CPU cycles to try to mine the internet for crypto coin, Bitcoin, whatever. And so it's not necessarily doing something to your computer other than using resources that you're kind of not, but it's still an issue. There are certainly reasons that an attacker will want to access your vulnerable systems, no matter what size your company is. The reason that then it's important to fight against that, aside from not wanting the headache of, say, being compromised with ransomware, is there is a consumer confidence and a reputational aspect to it. And I will step back and say I've been a little bit shocked at how quickly and easily, like Target and TJ Maxx and these companies that were targeted by these massive data breaches, how they were able to rebound. And when the dust settled, it basically had very little impact on sales or the bottom line. But your small company is not Target, and it's not TJ Maxx, and doesn't have the resources to weather that kind of a storm. And so there's going to be a much more serious impact, whether you're like I said, whether you're hit by ransomware, whether you're hit by any other kind of a data breach. A small company is going to really feel that and possibly be put out of business. And then most small companies, like if you're just a corner coffee shop, then that's your business and you're just selling coffee to people and whatever. But the majority of the small companies out there are in the business of doing services and supplying things to larger companies. And if you want to do business with Target or General Motors or American Airlines or whatever, you have to have your security in place, because they have a compliance mandate to maintain. They have to maintain their security, and part of maintaining their security is making sure that they're only doing business with third-party companies that have their security in order. So if your security is not up to par, you're going to lose out on business opportunities.
Yeah, and that's in the article you showed the trust badges where you can show McAfee secure or PayPal verified or all those things. Those are really important if you're doing e-commerce or you're selling from your website, all that sort of stuff. But it's just as important if you're working with big companies, is what you're saying. Like those credentials and proving is really important to make sure that you like secure and win those type of deals, right?
Absolutely. And like I said, it depends on who, the industry you're in and who you're trying to do business with. I mean, I talked with a customer recently that's a very small company. The company itself is, I think, less than 10 employees. But because of the business they're in on the finance side, dealing with credit and dealing with lenders at a much larger scale than they are, they have to meet the PCI compliance standards at a much higher level than your normal 10-person company. Because if they don't, they can't do business with the banks and the credit card companies that they need to do business with.
That's super interesting. Any other kind of final thoughts on cybersecurity or like high level stuff for 2019?
I guess I already touched on the ransomware and the cryptojacking. I guess two other quick points. One would be, I think we're going to see a shift away from endpoint security. I mean, there's always been this focus on, antivirus and personal firewalls, and I need to protect my computer. But for the trend in attacks now is targeting IoT, and whether that's, on the consumer level with like connected refrigerators or whatever is one thing, but the real target is like the industrial IoT and the controllers that are in like manufacturing facilities or controlling, electrical production, things like that. So industrial IoT, I think is the bigger attack on the horizon. And then the other is the rising concept of zero trust, because we've always had this idea of least privilege and, like I shouldn't make everyone an admin on their own machine, because then if I get your credentials and you're logged in as an admin, I can do anything I want. But if you're just an end user, then I can't get to things. Well, that's all fine and dandy, but now it's real easy to do like a phishing attack at the consumer level, get your credentials, log into your company, as you, and do things. And least privilege is a good start, but we have to kind of take that to the next level and look at what are you doing? Like, yes, you logged into the network and you had valid credentials. I know who you are, but why are you downloading, the financial database, or why are you logging in from Tel Aviv when you normally are logging in from Oakland? Those types of things. And it's having a platform or having the tools in place to constantly sort of monitor and check and continuously check not only who you are and whether you're authorized, but what are you doing and why.
Yeah, that was really interesting. I think one of the things that we are seeing is this, like, as you discussed with the IoT and the people being able to kind of like reimagine how they're hacking through devices. We're working on a story right now at the Mission about some cybersecurity stuff, and these, one of the crazy hacks that was through like I think it was a bank's fish tank. That those kind of things are it's going to be the new normal if we don't increase our posture.
That, and unless we're talking about two separate attacks, it was not a bank; it was a casino, I believe.
That's right. Yeah, casino. Yep. Yeah,
and
you're right.
They used like a connected like thermometer from inside the aquarium, and we're able to like connect to the casino network from there. And so there's really interesting attack scenarios that happen there, and just things you wouldn't really think of. I mean, when WannaCry was spreading, the ransomware attack was spreading, there were connected like CT scanners in hospitals that were compromised and sending out, and then we're transmitting ransomware. And so, like I said, basically, if it's connected to the internet, it can be compromised.
Yeah, totally. And that stuff is going to be everywhere, right? Like that's what we were talking about, like bring your own device to work day, right? It's like every day now. All of those devices are coming on your network all the time. So how do you govern that? How do you control that? And how do you eliminate the opportunities for threats there?
Right. And like I said, earlier, like regardless of what you do, I mean, you can do a lot of things on the front side to try to like reduce the exposure and try to like minimize the employees like kind of going rogue and doing their own thing. But on the other side, comprehensive visibility is absolutely crucial. You have to have some way of knowing everything that's on your network and have an accurate inventory of all of the devices and services that are connected at any given time.
All right, let's get into our final questions, the lightning round, brought to you by our good friends at Salesforce and the Lightning platform. These are fast and easy questions, just like the Lightning platform by Salesforce. Fast and easy. Just go to salesforce.com/build apps. It's a great place, and you can learn how to build apps faster. All right, number one. What app are you using on your phone that's the most fun?
I think most of my fun's really just in Instagram. I'm still trying to like, I want to like Snapchat, but I don't.
Favorite time-saving tool?
Favorite time-saving tool I already alluded to. I think that would be the Concur app for filing expenses.
Favorite use of AI or chatbots that you've seen recently?
That one I don't really know. I mean, I'm not a huge fan of like the auto response chatbots on like Facebook and stuff like that. I really like voice. I mean, it wasn't your question, but I really like where we're going with Alexa and Cortana and whatever else, and being able to interact with voice.
Do you have a favorite podcast or recent book that you've listened to or read?
Well, let's see. I had two favorite books this year. One was Ready Player One. Awesome book. The movie did not do it justice. The other was Artemis, which was from Dan Weir, who was the author of The Martian. And podcast, I like 99% Invisible.
What about favorite one-day getaway in the Houston area?
I'm going to go with Austin. I mean, I like Waco too. And I mean, I think if you're not in Texas, I think most people associate Waco with David Koresh and the whole like thing that went down with the FBI. But there's a lot of cool stuff in Waco. But Austin's really the best place in Texas.
Interesting how stuff like that happens, right? Where it's like you have a connotation of like one thing is the only thing that ever gets kind of remembered from those places. I have just been through Waco, but never stopped just driving through.
It's the birthplace of, I'm not sure if it's the birthplace, but the Museum of Dr. Pepper is there. So that's kind of cool.
Nice.
But there's a lot of cool stuff there. We've gone there a couple times recently as a family.
They don't have all the 23 flavors, keeping that secret sealed.
Yeah. They're not sharing that stuff. But no, it's a cool little city. But I'll take Austin over Waco.
All right, final question. You have any advice for first-time CIO or CTO from your insights over the years of studying and writing about this stuff?
I think my advice mostly would be listen. To go back to what I was saying earlier, it's yes, your job is to manage it all and to have a vision, and that's great, and ultimately you're going to be responsible for orchestrating all of that, but it's also important to make sure that you're actually talking to and understanding the pain points of the people who are depending on that vision, and make sure that you incorporate those things into it. So I think talking with the people who, like I said, your employees are your customers. So talk with them and make sure that you incorporate what they have to say into that larger vision.
I love it. Thanks so much, Tony. Anything we missed?
No, I think that should about cover it. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for hanging out, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you again to our friends at Salesforce. IT Visionaries is brought to you by the Lightning platform by Salesforce, a leading cloud platform that makes building AI-powered apps faster and easier. With Salesforce, now everyone can build apps for their organization. Learn more at salesforce.com/buildapps.